I'm Norman Ikari, last name spelled I-K-A-R-I, and I'm a Japanese American. And I was born in Seattle, Washington, from Japanese immigrant parents who came to America back in the World War I period, 1914, 1917. In 1930, which was the height of the Depression. By that time I was about 7 years old. The family moved from Seattle to Southern California. We moved to a small city just east of Los Angeles, Montebello. And there was when I encountered my first experience with racial prejudice and discrimination. On moving day, my entire family, plus a dog, piled into a truck and drove up to this house. And the landlady met us in tears, saying that the neighbors did not want a Japanese family in that house. At that point, I had never seen my mother cry before, and I think that was the first time I had ever seen my mother cry. After my high school graduation, I had hoped to go to college, but with the family finances in rather difficult straits, I went to work in markets as a fruit and vegetable clerk. So I stayed out of school for almost 3 years. By that time it was 1940, and I finally decided that I should get further education. So I registered at this 2-year college in Los Angeles City College. That was 1940. And then in 1941, you know, the most tragic day in American history probably happened, and that was Pearl Harbor Day on December 7th, 1941. And I very distinctly remember that terrible day. I was sitting in the living room of my house in Los Angeles, trying to do my homework for classes the next day, and over the radio came this hysterical voice that Japanese planes had bombed Pearl Harbor. And of course America was angered and shocked and devastated, really. But at that time, there were probably 150,000 or so Japanese and Japanese Americans living in the continental United States, primarily along the west coast of the Pacific Coast states, Washington, Oregon, California, all the way from the Canadian border down to the Mexican border. And also, there are probably 150,000 or more Japanese and Japanese Americans living in Hawaii. So, by Pearl Harbor time, America was up in arms, so that if you were Japanese, man, woman, or child, you know, you were the enemy. On January the 20th, 1942, it's just 40 days after Pearl Harbor, I received my draft notice from my draft board in Alhambra, California. Greetings, you are now in the Army. And I had gotten drafted under the selective service system. And so I was ordered to report to Fort MacArthur in San Pedro, California, just south of Los Angeles. And I was shipped with a bunch of guys to Camp Grant, Illinois, which is one of the Army's MRTCs, Medical Replacement Training Centers. So I was in basic training for about a month when I heard that my family, my mother, part of the family, had been evicted from their homes in Los Angeles and sent to these internment camps, surrounded by barbed wire. Altogether about 120,000 Japanese and Japanese American people living on the West Coast. Was I able to see my family in the internment camp? Yes. The first time was right after I had finished my basic training at Camp Grant, Illinois. We were allowed 10 days or 2 weeks leave to visit our family. And so I was able to go to Arizona, to the camp, to visit my mother. It was a very unpleasant trip. I was obviously in Army uniform, but it was not all that smooth. I was challenged at the camp and this kind of thing. In February of 1943, President Roosevelt and Secretary of War Stimson authorized the formation of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. This was to be a voluntary group composed entirely of Japanese American volunteers. And this was in February of 1943. By that time I had been in Camp Grant for almost a year. So in November of 1943, I requested transfer to the 442nd. My transfer request was granted. I was busted to private and transferred to Camp Shelby. And we landed in Naples, Italy. And then in June of 1944, we finally went into line, into combat. And so this was my beginning with my combat days. On the 17th of July, I was in an advanced squad. I got shot down by a couple of German bullets. And so the medics came down the hill to get me, and that was the end of my active days with the 442nd. I had a bullet through my left thigh, left femur, and a bullet through my right lower leg. At that time, I was a number 2 scout. I was in the leading group. But we were just below the top of the ridge lines, so this meant that I was still exposed, to the enemy down below. So it was pretty painful. But the bullet that went through my left femur also cut my femoral artery. And I didn't know it at the time, of course, except that I started to lose consciousness from bleeding out. And fortunately, my medic friend, together with another volunteer, came running down the hill to get me, carry me back. And that was the beginning of my hospital days, you might say.